It started in the early 60s with a project by UNESCO. This project was called East-West. The idea was to develop Asian studies in Latin America and Latin American studies in Asia. So they looked for a country in Latin America who could develop this project, who would be trustworthy to develop this project. Fortunately, Mexico was chosen as the country in which these studies would be developed. Anyway, we were given a grant, and for about 5 years, UNESCO guaranteed to send us teachers, to send us professors on several aspects of Asian studies in general. So we had 4 different areas: China, Japan, India, and the Middle East. They sort of asked for people to apply to be a student in one of the areas. I applied. Why did I apply to study Asian studies? I wanted to keep on studying. I was in a moment in my life in which I could not afford to study on my own. I didn't have the money, so the offer of a scholarship was a very important thing for me. I already had studied philosophy, and I was attracted to Chinese studies because from the 4 areas, I thought it was the most interesting of the 4. What I can say is that after studying for a few years, what had been a sort of an arrangement of convenience became a love story. It's just that China is so interesting. I mean, there is so much in Chinese culture that I just couldn't do anything else anymore. I mean, that's all I wanted to do, and that's all I wanted to do now. Strangely enough, when I was very young, my mother used to read novels of an American writer, Pearl Buck, who wrote a lot about China with a lot of sympathy and empathy to China. So I read those books, and I always dreamt of China. It just somehow made me think of this place that I would like to know. And then, of course, the Chinese Revolution, we were all extremely interested in what was happening, and we didn't know much. But I think all those things made me choose China, and I don't regret it. I have to point out that in 1978, my direct contact with Chinese was very difficult. It was just starting to be possible, but it was very difficult. So I did get a feeling of more being nearer the Chinese, but I was still not in. Later, in the 80s, it was much more possible. And people told me the stories, and they told me about their families, and that was very, very useful to understand how a Chinese family functioned, okay? But in the 70s, it was very difficult. In the 80s, it was better. In the 90s, better. In the 2000s, it was very good. I mean, in the 2000s, I could see my Chinese friends and be with them, go out with them, be at their houses. It was fantastic. But you have to think of how things started little by little opening up. Well, I always tell my friends that uh, every time I go to China, I'm not only in a different country, I'm in a different planet. I started, my first time in China was 75. So you can imagine what it means to me to go. The last time I was there was 2016. I mean, I mean, what happened from 78 to 2016, I didn't think I would see it in my life during my lifetime, okay? I mean, it's unbelievable. China is an experience, and every time I've lived in China, I've been extremely happy. Why? I don't know. I'm happy in China. I just like Chinese people, and I feel comfortable with them. And as I told you before, for me, Chinese culture is a never-ending possibility of study and of learning things. I mean, every day I learn something more about China, and I mean, I'm not young, so I think until the end of my life I will continue learning about China.